Hello everybody and good morning from the Masai Mara here in Kenya. My name is James Henry and we have been out since, would you believe it, 3:30 this morning. Yes, that's what I said, 3:30 this morning. But we're awake now because the sun is awake. Senzo is on camera today. There he is. Those are his 3 fingers, one with a really startling nail on it. Anyway, that's the way of things, and this is Senzo's first impression of the great Mara Plains. What do you think, Senzo? I'm really enjoying having Senzo here, of course, because he is a taste of South Africa. He is, of course, a speaker of isiZulu, which is, as we're both discovering, relatively similar to Kiswahili in some ways. Right, let's go back to those elephants. A very large herd of them. They are sitting underneath a number of trees. I will tell you that during the night we saw topi, we saw zebra, we saw elephant, we saw 1 scrub hare, we saw a number of buffalo, and indeed a small herd of wildebeest. We were looking for lions. We did find one before we saw you. Unfortunately, he disappeared into a bush and went to sleep. And then we also had a very nice black rhino sighting. So we've actually had a pretty good morning so far. Hashtag Safari Live is how you get hold of us, of course. I know you know that, but I'll tell you that it's just as easy for you to ask me questions as it is for you to ask Tristan and Ali as they explore the woodlands of the Sabi sand in South Africa. Elephants are probably at about 100 meters from us. This is a completely no off-roading zone at the moment. So we'll look at them for a little while, and then I think what we'll do is press on and head towards some of the, well, the more sort of watered, marshy spots on the river. Maybe we'll pick up on a lion or 2, but we're just sort of discovering things at the moment. Many of you, of course, have not seen my hat from yesterday. Thank you very much to those very complimenting me on it. I'm not sure it works myself. The reason I have it is not so much so that I can look like Crocodile Dundee or Indiana Jones. It is because the sun here is of a brightness that is really exceptional. We're very high up, about 1,600 meters. No, not quite. Maybe, I think at this point we're probably about 1,400 meters above sea level now. And we're also on the equator, which makes for a blindingly hot sun. But surprisingly, it doesn't, while the light is white, I mean, I can't even see the sky, it's so white there. The color remains here rather more than it does in other areas I've been where it gets bright. So I think that's quite interesting. Let's have one last look at the Ellies, and then we're going to press on.
Question. R. Lara Moore. What is Swahili? R. Lara what?
Now, R. Lara Moore, you want to know what the Swahili word for elephant is, and I will tell you that it is very similar to the one that it is in Zulu, and in Shangaan it is Ndlovu. It's exactly the same. Now, you may think, gosh, that's impressive, he's learnt that in 2 days. It is, of course, not impressive. I'm staring to the back of the car where Manu is sitting. Manu is helping us out on camera while we're here in Kenya. And he is a Kiswahili speaker, and so he was mouthing the word to me. That's how I knew it. Simba, of course, we know is lion, from the Lion King. And we've just heard that Pembe is the word for black rhino. Righty, we are going to press on from here. Ali has managed to find herself, well, something possibly covered in a lot of dirt. Topi! Everybody, a topi. I'm most pleased to be seeing the topi at this stage of the morning, mostly because it is doing a very clever thing, and what it's doing, of course, is standing upon a termite mound in order to give it advantage to look this way towards us and away in front of us where, well, perhaps there's some lions lurking around the place. In fact, it now seems to be sniffing at the possibility of termites for breakfast, which is, of course, unusual, and as little as I do know about topi, I do know, of course, that they are not, in fact, termite eaters by default. In fact, they are, well, grazers and ruminants. Now the topi has got an itchy chin. Now, if we pan slowly to the left, I will show you just quickly, way in the distance, got nothing to do with wildlife, but it does have to do with one of the things that makes the Mara so very exciting to many people. Under that tree, the big tree, no, stop, back, right a little. Yes, those 3 trees, oh, sorry, I'm completely wrong, Senzo, you were absolutely right. There you are, yeah, bang in there. Straight there. Zoom. And a little bit right. You can see a little bit of white. No, to the right. To the right. You can see a little bit of white there underneath a tree. That is a group of guests there. You can see them wandering around. You may say to yourself, good heavens, there seem to be people wandering around willy-nilly in the Masai Mara. How are they doing that? Well, they're not, in fact. They were landed there by a balloon that took off at, well, what time did it take off? Must have taken off probably at about 6:10 or so. And, well, we're going to be doing some views from the balloon fairly soon. So I'm really looking forward to doing that. Hopefully I'll be able to do it. I'll certainly be able to narrate it to you as we do it. I'm not sure when we're going to do it first, but we'll keep you posted on that. Now, James, you want to know if there's anything that I've not seen here that I would like to see here. Sorry, I'm just a bit distracted because the topi are now running at high speed. They don't appear to be being chased, and the Sabi, of course, which is what a topi is, are apparently the fastest antelope that there are. This one is doing a very gentle jog at the moment. James, well, I saw one of the things that I was hoping to see early this morning. We saw a hartebeest, which I had not seen last time I was here. James, I would like to see a cheetah here. I know it's a little bit banal, given that, cheetah are common in this area, apparently. But I didn't see a cheetah last time we were here, and it's interesting. We don't really know why that was, but perhaps to say that it could be because the herds were here, and therefore the lions were, well, perhaps in greater profusion. There were certainly some nomadic lions that follow the herds in, but I think there was a lot more lion activity when I was last here. And Brent's already had 2, one successful, one unsuccessful cheetah kill. And I think he's actually seen a few more that haven't been on camera. And so I'm hoping to spend a bit of time with some cheetah around here over the next little while. Good, well, that's it for this particular topi sighting. I think we'll move on and see what else we can see down the way. Most impressed with the Nkahumas for their efforts today, killing a zebra. The zebras, of course, of the greater Kruger National Park are very unimpressed with the efforts of the Nkahumas. No, Carol, you're absolutely correct. You say the termite mounds here don't look quite as high as the ones in South Africa. They aren't. I'm not entirely sure if it's the same species of termite. I think it is. The large fungus-growing termite, I think, is the only termite that builds mounds of this style. But the soil is very different, Carol, and I think that's probably why the mounds look so very different. Really is rather magnificent driving through these plains of red oat grass, or Themida triandra, which I've pointed out to you many times on the bushwalks. And I've said to you that this is what draws all of those wildebeest up here when the rains do come. Well, they have come. And what's interesting to me, though, is that this grass has already gone to seed. Sorry, Kirsten, I've missed you. Try that again. Oh, there we go. Fuzzman Sparkles, we have a question coming from you that sounded to me as follows. Word you can shake, but it's about nata. I'm not sure what that means, so I'm going to ask for it again while we look at what I think is a rufous-naped lark. Oh. When can we start to expect to see night drives from the Mara? That is not a rufous-naped lark. It looks like a cisticola of some description, possibly a rattling one. Fuzzman Sparkles, I'm not sure yet. We are still trying various things out at the moment, figuring a few things here and there. But certainly we will keep you posted, and there will be night drives, and we have all of the equipment required to do it. It's just a question of getting that equipment onto the vehicles and then making that equipment talk to you. Righty, we're going to carry on from here. Ali is, well, they're actually on fire, the Tristan and Ali couple. We've had lions, we've had buffalo, and now you're going to have... Hello everybody, here we are with a number of Giraffe, Camelolepardalis tippleskirchi, the Masai giraffe. Aren't they lovely? Especially in this landscape. Now, just in case you're wondering while you watch these great beasts wandering gently across the plains, we are an hour ahead of South Africa, which means that it is now, I don't know, it must be, 8 o'clock in the morning here? 8:30 in the morning here, and 7:30 there in South Africa. And so that's, we're a little bit further east than South Africa, or quite a lot further east, which is probably why it looks a lot brighter here than it does over there. It's not that the morning is necessarily that much brighter, you see. Now, the reason I'm not saying very much is that, of course, it's checking the tippleskirchis in my book. Now, Shelley, of course, you have well succeeded where I have failed in many respects. You've said that, yay, World Giraffe Day. It is indeed World Giraffe Day. That is absolutely correct. And therefore we should pay tribute to what I think is probably one of Africa's most iconic creatures. And certainly it used to astound me when, I've told you the story a few times, when people used to come out and get on the back of the Land Rover, and I'd say, well, what would you like to see? Well, strictly speaking, I would sit down at tea with them and introduce myself, and then say, after having cut them a delightful piece of orange cake and poured them their coffee just the way they liked it, and then you say, well, what would you like to see? And they say, we're here to see the Big Five, because that's what some relatively imbecilic agent has told them that they have to see, when the Big Five, of course, excludes this completely astounding animal. And so I used to say to them, don't you want to see giraffe? And they'd stare at me as though I'd stepped on the proverbial Swiss cheese, and say, of course we want to see giraffe. And then you would have to explain that they are not part of the Big Five, which of course makes the Big Five that much more inane. Now, I think this giraffe has got amorous intentions. Yes, indeed he does. He's exhibiting the phlegm grimace. He has been sniffing the urine of the cow in front of him, and he is now perking up substantially. Now, we have watched the deeply, deeply slow and what only looks like profoundly painful process of the southern giraffe trying to mate in the Sabi sand. As far as I'm aware, we have yet to see a tippleskirchi engage in the same activity of making more tippleskirchis, and perhaps this is to be a first. They both seem to be staring rather gormlessly towards us. Of course, there could be a pride of lions just behind us, but there isn't. And Barbara, you say you love giraffe. Well, Barbara, I love giraffe too. I think they're fantastic things, and I think we're very lucky to be looking at them. Especially this version of them. Now, they are not that much or that obviously different from the southern giraffe. Their patterning is slightly less regular. Each patch is slightly less regular than the patches on the southern giraffe. And it's only when you see the reticulated giraffe a little further north in Kenya, that you notice a really big difference. But to all intents and purposes, they are the same animal. They are different subspecies, but that doesn't mean that they're genetically very dissimilar at all. And interestingly, they're browsing on very low-hanging shrubs, the identification of which, I'm afraid at this stage, escapes me. Hello, Cheyenne. You're just 6 years old, and you've obviously got very good eyes. You say, why do they have those bumps on their heads? Well, I think you're talking about their horns, or what we might call their ossicones. Or if you watch Byron this afternoon, he might refer to them as the ossicles, which of course is incorrect, and I like to tease Byron about that. But the ossicones are those bumps or horns that you can see on the top of the head there, and for the males, they're used for fighting. They're used to bash each other, and they bash each other because they fight over the ladies, over the females. But that's why we think they have those horns. Now, what's slightly strange about that, Cheyenne and everyone else, is that, of course, in most of the animals where male and female have horns, they are used as defense against predators. And in those species where only the males have horns, well, often they're largely used for just fighting each other during the rutting or mating seasons. Now, in giraffe, of course, the males do not use their horns to defend themselves against predators at all, because they are much too tall to be effective against something like a lion. They kick quite viciously against lions. And so why the females should have horns, well, I think that's another matter entirely. I don't really know why. In fact, I've never given it a moment's thought until right now. I shall have to give it more thought and hope that you will all do the same for me. Lexi, you're wondering about alarm calls and whether or not giraffe have them. They do, actually. They're a little bit more difficult to define than many of the alarm calls you'd hear from something like, say, a kudu or a nyala or a waterbuck or I'm trying to think of a species here, reedbuck, which whistles, actually, in alarm. But they can make a snort. I've heard them snort. I've also heard them make a loud groaning noise in alarm, so they will do both. But also, of course, we know that they communicate infrasonically, and it's quite possible that they do that when they're alarmed as well, not just when they are having a chat, a good old chin wag about the balloons that have just flown over their heads, and whether or not the pilot nearly clipped them on the top of their ossicones as he flew by. Now, Tristan Dix, photographer extraordinaire, tracker extraordinaire, is currently looking at the ninkapumas in the early morning South African light, so let us go back there and join him. Who's never seen a Defasa waterbuck? What differentiated it from the one at home? And I'm pleased to say I tricked him completely, and he did not realize it was because it does not have the ring around the buttocks. Other than that, it is nigh identical to the ones we get back home. Of course, I'm eventually going to have to stop saying that, or stop comparing the animals, because, well, it'll probably get a little bit boring. They're also darker, of course. I really quite like them. And it's in fact the same species, it's just a different subspecies from the ones we get at home. And the oxpeckers, those are red-billed, are they? I think they're red-billed. Red Bull. Now, Ash, as you say that this is a majestic waterbuck, I have to agree. I think he's posing, rather. He's got a very thick neck, and I wonder if he hasn't just come out of a bit of a rut or the mating season, perhaps. I mean, they would have in South Africa some time back, but I don't know about here. I don't know how seasonal they are as breeders out here. Magnificent. Well, we haven't got very far since I last saw you, so we're probably going to keep driving. And yeah, I think you're right, Siberia Zuma. You say you think the waterbuck here have a slightly darker nose ridge. Yeah, I think I would agree with you. Alrighty. I do apologize. It would seem that there seems to be some audio dropping or audio difficulties. I'm sorry about that. We will attempt to, of course, fix the problem. Alrighty, let's press on from the Defasser waterbuck. We've also seen an exactly probably what happened to my last pair of sunglasses. Alright, we're going to continue. I'll just quickly show you where we're heading. If you look way in the distance there, you can see a ridge of trees over the top. That's the one, the far one there. That's the sort of going to be the terminal point of our drive, and then we're going to turn around from there and come back again. All right, while we do that, Justine still with the Inca Pumas and their zebra breakfast. Right, everybody, look at that. A particularly magnificent spot of a cheetah. Looks like a male to me. Not entirely sure. My very first Mara cheetah. And spotted by, well, a chap from Chitwa, which is a camp just north of where we operate, Angama Mara. And then I could spot it, Sensor, all the way from South Africa, KwaZulu-Natal. He managed to spot the cheetah lying underneath that bush. It's a fantastic, fantastic sighting. Yes, I know it's not chasing a Thompson's gazelle right now, but maybe it'll get up and do that shortly. Isn't that good? It's quite far away from us, about 100 meters or so. And I mean, how you would see that with the naked eye, just don't know. I mean, that really is impressive. And now apparently this is not a male, apparently it's a female. And you can see there, now look at the, look at the picture that Senzo was produced for you there. He's showing you how difficult, of course, it is to be spotting this creature. And now he'll zoom in to where it is. And I'm being told there's a vulture in the tree. Of course, there isn't a vulture in the tree, it's a heron. But Kirsten will go through the bird list when I get back. Cheetah is up. Oh, this is wonderful. Now, I'm sure Brent has mentioned this, but there is no kind of vehicle limit on the main roads in this area. So, I mean, we can follow her, but if she does start to move, it is quite possible that our view will be cut off by other vehicles. So just be aware, it is slightly different, of course, from the exclusivity that is afforded us in a place like Djuma. The trade-off, of course, is space. What a magnificent creature you are, my dear. Now, we've yet to, of course, identify our cheetah characters out here, or not all of them, certainly. And I don't know if this is a similar one or the same one that Brent saw hunting. Oh, this is just spectacular. Look at this. Oh, wow. Rebecca, you say it's got such long, skinny legs. Indeed, she does. And those long, skinny legs, quite unlike a human being that is very fast, allow her to move at an astonishing pace. This is just spectacular. Very similarly built, of course, to something like a greyhound. And her speed not only comes from her very long legs, but also from an extremely flexible spine. There's a bird I can't identify. Alarm calling at her, sounds like a frog. I think we stay right here. There we go. I don't think we'll get a better view, I'm afraid. We can't go off-road in this area. But she's totally confiding. Alright, while we wait and see what she does, I believe that one of the Birmingham boys is going to try and put his breakfast under a bush. Indeed, found the largest sort of, I wonder if it is a termite mound at all, actually. I think it's just a piece of large knoll of soil of really indeterminate origin. I'm not sure if that is in fact a termite mound or not. I don't think so. Anyway, she's found it as a vantage point, and much as the topi was doing a little bit earlier, she is now, of course, surveying the landscape for something that she might like to eat. In this case, most likely a Thompson's gazelle. And if you do hear a bit of human chatter, that's not because Sensor is overwhelmed with excitement. It is because there is a vehicle full of people next to us. All enjoying the sighting of this amazing cheetah. I mean, that really is quintessential, isn't it? Now, I can't see anything for her to sort of set her sights on around here. There are some topi around, they'll be a bit big, a couple of zebra. Well, hundreds of zebra, but they're definitely too big. And so I think she's going to have to wait for the arrival of a Thompson's gazelle, or perhaps an impala. And thank you all for your screenshots. Always nice to have them. Oh, she's great. Now let me just give you an idea of the temperature here. I'm going to guess that it's probably sitting at around 19 degrees centigrade in the shade, which is about 70 odd Fahrenheit, 69 odd. And maybe she has spotted something. And although the sun is bright, the altitude that we have here makes the climate very comfortable. And apparently, somebody has seen behind the tail, and they think it's a male cheetah, which will make me very happy, because it was my initial impression. Then I heard somebody, one of the guides who was here before, referring to it as a female. Let's see if we can't see. That is most certainly a male cheetah. Well done, Kirsten. Well spotted. Francis, I'm very sorry. You're in Israel and I've missed your question. And what I heard was, do cheetahs pay tax? Which I'm sure wasn't your question. Oh, do cheetahs stay in packs? Not do they pay tax? No, they don't. The females and males will be largely solitary, but the males sometimes form coalitions. So they will sometimes live with their brothers, And certainly the two that we see at Djuma most regularly are two brothers that live in a coalition that is a permanent sort of arrangement. But often the males will be solitary, and this chap is probably solitary. I don't know that we're going to get a better view than that. I think he's going to head off into the woodland there. Now, what cheetah do, although they hunt in the clearings, they will often walk on the fringes of a clearing through the woodland like that. Oh, sorry about that. And you can see, and what he's doing is exactly that, and I think he might come out and hunt a little bit later. But you can see there in front of us, well, a number of people enjoying the great Masai Mara and its exceptional animals. Alrighty, on we go. What a great sighting. We'll see if we can't get one more view. Alternatively, we'll press on and see what else we can find. We're going to get a better view than we've had. No, I don't think we're going to get a better view at this stage. So let's head back across to Tristan and the actually eating cats. Why? They're not uncommon here, but that is a Grant's gazelle. What's really nice is there's some Thompson's gazelles behind those, not the zebra, obviously, but the smaller ones, and you can see very nicely the difference between the Grant's and the Thompson's gazelle. The Tommies are much smaller, and the Grant's, well, they've got much bigger horns and more snubby noses. They look almost like a sort of mixture between an impala and a gazelle. That zebra is not doing itself any favours. You're on television, you might want to perk your ears up slightly. You look a bit like a donkey. 3 species in, well, half a frame, really. And there you can see the light has changed completely. Now it's getting to that pretty harsh white light. Now, all of these Thompson's gazelles I did not see, but I suspect that that cheetah from his vantage point will spot them eventually, and he may well come wandering down here at some stage to see if he can't catch himself some breakfast. Oh, there's just life everywhere you look here. There's a much quieter chorus of birds at the moment because I think it's got a bit hotter. Senzo? Can you look straight through there? Just over the top of my finger and see if you can see what I'm looking at. It's miles away, yeah. If you look at that, if you look straight through that gap in the bushes that you've got there. No, not that. Now peel to the right slightly. Just slowly pan to the right. In between there. Somewhere around there. Keep going right. A little bit more. Yeah, where that car is. Now just a little bit further to the right. There. Now just zoom in there. Oh, I can't see it anymore. I mean, there's lots of stuff there, but there's an ostrich. Oh, there it is. Keep going right. Keep going right. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going there. That black dot is an ostrich at about 2 kilometers. That is the amazing thing about this place. You can see things 2 kilometers away. That's astounding. Sorry, we had a question and I've missed it, I'm afraid. Can we have it again? Emily, you said any 2 zebras have the same stripe pattern. Emily, no, they don't, and it would be astounding if they did. And what's interesting, I mean, much like, I think there have been the odd zebra twin born, or the odd pair of twins born, most likely they were not monozygotic, but dizygotic. So, what do you call them? They're not monozygotic, they are fraternal. In other words, they came from 2 eggs, and so, no, their stripes are not the same. It would be outlandish if you were to find 2 zebras with the same stripes, in the same way that it would be outlandish to find 2 human beings with the same stripe, same fingerprints. Not stripes, we're not striped animals. But and the likelihood of that is so low that not even identical twins have the same fingerprints. So, the oft-quoted line about zebra, far too oft-quoted as far as I'm concerned, is that no 2 zebra have got the same stripe pattern. Well, that is absolutely true, but it's not particularly remarkable at all. You try and think of one organism anywhere that has exactly the same markings as the others of its species, and I think that you will have some difficulty. I suspect even if you looked at something like, 2 dung beetles of the same species, I think you'd find some individuality. But certainly if something as large as a zebra, no. Even with impala, I know they look almost identical. You'll find that there are definitely differences in their pelages. Now, Kathy, you want to know if a Thompson's gazelle is bigger than a duiker. I'm going to say a Thompson's gazelle is about 10% larger than a duiker, and then I'm going to consult this book that I have and tell you that a Thompson's gazelle apparently has a mass, of about 25 kilograms. Male, well, 20 to 35, that's quite a wide range, so let's just say 27. And a big duiker will weigh about 20 kilograms. A big common duiker, that is, of course. Let me just check that that is true. I'm pretty sure it's true. There are many, many duiker species. We, of course, only get the one Djuma. Where is the common duiker? Hang on a second. Wild bush duiker is what they call it. Yeah, it's exact. I was almost exactly right, except that the female, of course, is bigger than the duiker, than the male. I'd forgotten that. And the Thompson's gazelle is the other way around. I will tell you that I don't think the cheetah has emerged from the bushes, so I think we'll carry on from our current position and see what else we can find across the plains of East Africa. And if you are wondering, of course, whenever anyone talks about East Africa, one must talk about out of Africa. And as far as I'm aware, much of that film was shot right here. And certainly our camp, just near Angama Mara, has that very last iconic scene of the lion and sitting on the... Sorry, one second here. That iconic scene of the lion sitting on the gravesite is just in front of one of the rooms at Angama. Sorry, Kirsten, I'm afraid I missed that in its entirety. I got entirely onto another subject. Jeffrey in Texas, you say we need to play the game Spot the Animal from a billion miles away. Well, I think that this is definitely the best place to do it. And Brent was saying to me that he reckons his eyes have really adjusted quite nicely to spotting at distance the other day. I don't think mine have. I did that with the aid of some fairly good binoculars. Well, there seems to be another gathering of vehicles up ahead. I wonder what splendours await us there. Of course, the real reason I've come into this particular area is that this is the last time I saw Scarface. Let's head straight across to Ali at Chitwa Dam with a nice surprise. Coming into a very, very large herd of beefalo. thought for an instant the migration has arrived, but it has not. Look at this vast, vast herd. Let me stop. Well, I'll stop just about in the middle of it, and then you'll get an impression of its extent. I think there are about 250 animals here. Ooh, and there's some eland as well. Let us begin here, Sens, and we'll just pan around, and then I'll show you the eland. And in case every so often I park badly, like right now, and you get that pole in the picture, that's because I've parked like an idiot, but we have to have the pole, because we have to have a roof on in the Mara. And while it's not particularly the most film-friendly thing, it is great for shade, I must tell you, and with sun like we have here, very important. I'm not sure why these buffalo have decided they're so terrified. You might see lions come chasing across the plains after them. Hang on. What is chasing across there? Just more buffalo. I think they're just scared of us. Don't see anything else that it could be. Rudy, you say, do the animals here ever get close to the vehicles? They do, Rudy, but just remember, I mean, when you say do the animals get close to the vehicles, I know exactly what you mean, because it feels a little bit like the animals at Djuma, for example, are much closer than they are here to the vehicles. That is often the case, and it's for two reasons. One, there's much less stringent off-road driving protocols there. Not less stringent, but more well-defined. Because it's a private reserve, it's much more easily controllable, and so, you know, there is a little bit more off-road driving. Something is going on here. This is fantastic. I just can't see why they should be running, because there's nothing actually behind them. Isn't that great? Gee, that's a great shot. That is beautiful. Ruti, so the other part of your question is that, so and I'm going to drive into the middle of this herd if I can. You will find that we can get pretty close to them in that way. As close, often, as we can in the Sabi Sand. I've just got to move off the road here, I'm afraid, sorry. There's another car behind us. But also, so, I mean, the point of what I'm saying to you is that often we are approaching the animals in the Sabi Sand. It's not the other way around. Hi. Carry on. Go for it. Everyone is a bit surprised by our camera, you see. Being very polite. So I hope that answers your question. Certainly, I mean, I've been as close to lions as I have in the Sabi Sands over here. But, you know, unless it's a really special sighting, we won't go off-road for it. And because you can see so much more clearly, it's often not necessary. And so I suppose that does result in a very different feeling from the one that you've just had while you're watching those Nkuhumas. I can imagine that you were parked probably within 10 meters of them. I'd love to know why these things were running. Anyway, let's have a look around there. I mean, it's more than 200 strong, this herd. It's still coming. And it was right around here, everybody, that I last saw the great scarf face last year. Nearly everywhere you look, it is just magnificence. Yes, yeah, I know exactly what you mean. You say it reminds you of an old Western movie. Yes, I suppose it does, rather. see the wind starting to pick up there. The zebra running in the background. I'm listening to a conversation on the vehicle in front of us. I think they're Indian guests asking their guide if these buffalo can be milked like the ones that they get back home. And the guide is absolutely incredulous that anyone should consider milking a buffalo. Of course, it's entirely reasonable if you happen to be from India, because they look almost identical. Well, not quite, but just about. Anyway, he suggested quite strongly that milking these buffalo would be an extremely bad idea, which I tend to agree with. And it's a common question because it's quite well. I mean, it's one of my favourite subjects, talking about why they were never domesticated. And it's because they will try and kill you. Now, Roshni, carrying on with the theme of are we going to get close to animals, or, will we always stay this far away from them? You're saying, will we get close to the animals during the migration? I get the feeling that there is a sort of feeling, if you like, that we are much further away from the animals than we are at Djuma. I think that is in some ways true, but in other ways it's not. There's so much more space here that it almost looks like we're further away than we are. Roshni, we will be doing more off-road driving when the migration comes, once we've established ourselves properly here. Certainly during our TV shows we have permission to drive off-road in some areas, and we will be doing that. But as we become more and more familiar with the area and the animals, I suspect we will get quite a lot closer to some of them. But remember, the volume of vehicles here means that they have to be very, very stringent on the rules. They have to be very, very careful of what they allow and where. But I will try and get close to these buffalo now for you. The vehicle in front of us, with the people who want to milk them, has now got basically into the middle of the herd. I'm very pleased to tell you that no milking is currently taking place, and indeed it doesn't look like it's going to. So let's see if we can't get into the middle of this herd. And Shamsan, you say the horns of these buffalo different from the ones at Djuma. They're not. Certainly the bulls here are bigger. They're definitely bigger, and they've got much wider spaced horns. But otherwise, they're pretty much identical. I mean, it'd be difficult if you put a Sabi sand buffalo into the middle of this herd, you wouldn't notice the difference. Yeah, now we're right in the middle of the herd. No more than 10 meters or 15 meters from some of them. And of course the other thing is that because we do so much off-road driving at a place like Djuma in the Sabi sand, the animals become that much more used to us being that much closer to them. And so their fight and flight response is modified accordingly. Alrighty, we're going to start heading for home now, and we're going to go across to Ali, who has unfortunately lost her hounds. What an unbelievable morning this has been. We're just sitting with a precious herd of elephants here. I'm going to move a little bit forward. But leopard, lion, elephant, almost the magnificent seven. And if you've been with us just before the start of drive, you would have seen a black rhino. Unfortunately, well, we've got a bit of time left. We might find one. Just a little bit irritated as they head into the woodland as the day starts to get a bit warmer. They'll probably head off and spend the time on the fringes of the great Mara River, I think, for the rest of the day. Now, we're not far from where we first saw the tipple sketchies this morning for International Giraffe Day, which of course it is. Tess, you say we're so blessed today. We are indeed beyond blessed. Well, beyond blessed would be a black rhino just around the corner. Anyway, as they head off there, we're going to see if we can't get ourselves very lucky before the end of the drive. I'll just quickly show you up onto the hill. That is where we're heading. You see there, Senzo, on the very top of the hill. I'm sorry about the roof. It is a necessary... well, not evil, but it is necessary. Okay, we're going to head up towards the hill there. Let's go back to Tristan, Tamba, and Tandi. Tamba is ears. And while we think about that, I just want to say that there is a vast plethora of life going on here. There's a little waterhole, not too far from where we are now. There are zebra. There are impala that have they're coming in from the right there. Then there are some pigs, giraffe, and I'm just going to ask Senzo to do his best to show them all to you. And they're all coming in to have a sort of mid-morning drink, I think, before we go off to have our mid-morning brunch. Right there. Senzo, I must just tell you, since the sun's come up, because I couldn't see him before the sun came up, it was too dark, has had a fairly fixed grin on his face. And I think, Senzo, you quite like it out here, don't you?
Mm. I can't see warthogs now.
No, the warthogs have disappeared. Oh, yeah. If you look straight ahead of us, just between those two impala, you can see the little pig's ears sticking up through the grass there. You see them there? That's it. Warthogs here seem to be about as skittish as the ones at Djuma. Zebra making whinnying noises. Just very special, lovely atmosphere. I must say this, as I've always said to you, that every wilderness place I've ever been has a unique smell, and this place has a unique smell of its own too. It smells like Mara, really. I'm not sure really how better to describe that. It's almost like a cut grass smell, if you like. The soil smells a little bit like Pinder in Natal, which I suppose it must be relatively totally dissimilar to. A little bit like standing water, but in a nice way. It's got a wonderful, wonderful smell. We make our way up through the herd. Oh, look at those impala there, with their enormous horns. One of them has lost his horn, and yet he seems to be the victor in the spat that's going on here. go. That's quite something, isn't it? Roshni, you say you can hear the zzz sounds? The zizzing sounds? What was that? Oh, the zebra sound. Sorry, my communications are not great today. Yes, you can hear the zebra sounds, and it is a wonderful sound to be hearing. I can also hear, the reason I got a little bit confused is that I can hear some kind of a grasshopper that's making, it's stridulating. That's not a cicada. Righty, let us continue. Quite something, this place. We'll have one last look at this big herd and then we'll move on. Just look down there. Sally, you say this looks like a scene out of a movie. Well, Sally, have a look at what you're about to see. Look at that. That is very special. Very special indeed. Countless times the battles of the wilderness, life and death, being played out again and again and again out here. Gorgeous. Alrighty, let's go up. Hello, chaps. Alright, I believe that Ali is at another waterhole and she'd like to tell you about that now.